we should get back over to Europe because things are moving. The season is really ramping up. We had the first monument over the season, Milano-Sanremo, and I just love how that race was won.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what part did you love? I mean, it was like, oh, the tension, the build up, the Cipressa Poggio, and then it seemed like every top rider was out there throwing punches on the Poggio, with Soren Kragh Andersen really lighting the fuse, and there he was, Matej Mohorič, doing his thing. He loves descending, but this time there was a special twist in his cocktail mix.
Yeah, and before we, dive into this, one thing that I just love is seeing a team, a racer go into a race with a plan that has been concocted for months and then executed on race day. That's something that's really cool. Mahor, he just barely managed to get himself up to the 4 liters of Matthew van der Poel, Wout van Aert. There were 4 guys going over the top of the Poggio, and Mahoric, it was a do or die moment. He had to get there. He bridged the gap. It was, probably only a 5-second gap, but that's pretty hard when you've just climbed flat out for 5 minutes. Blitzes through the 4 liters on the descent. He gets through them before he gets to the second hairpin, and then Gregor dropper post engage.
Whoa, yeah. I mean, I saw Merida, the bike manufacturer, tweeting about it right away online, and because I don't think many of us knew what was going on, but apparently before the race, we saw those images there ahead of the race where he was inside the Vigarelli Velodrome where Fausto Coppi set the hour record back during the Second World War. Bombs were falling around Milan, and right there you see it. And there's also a U.S. American football field pitch in the middle of this velodrome. Think about that, Michael. In the middle of Milan, there's a U.S. football field right there. And Mohoric apparently was telling anybody who could listen, he told Pogačar, Tadej Pogačar, who was also up there in that group of 4 you mentioned, that he's got this dropper post. Don't bother trying to stick with me on the descent. And Mohoric is already a crazy dog going down the descents. I mean, and add into this dropper post, which you twist it. It allows you to get down lower because UCI has banned the super tuck position. That Mohoric is one of the innovators and early people who have applied that super tuck position. Even when I remember him winning the under 23 worlds right here across town in Florence, but we can no longer do that. So riders like him are looking for another way to get lower down on the bike, and that's what he did with the dropper post.
Yeah, I'm just so pleased to see it, Gregor. There's been talk about the dropper post, coming into road cycling, because certainly road cycling has adopted a lot of mountain bike technology, and this is just the latest in that string of tech crossovers. But it was really made necessary by the UCI banning the super tuck. And what I went on a rant last year, and I'm not going to do a show about UCI banning the super tuck, but the major casualty that I saw of that decision was the ability for riders like Matej Mohoric, who are not necessarily going to win in a sprint, not necessarily going to win on a climb, but they can use their just incredible bike handling skills on descents through tight corners to take an advantage over the rest of the field. And that is, in my opinion, one of the greatest beauties of the sport of cycling is there is a little niche for everybody. There are so many different ways to win a bike race, and you just have to use the attributes that you have at your disposal. And Matej Mohoric, obviously incredibly strong guy, but where he shines above all else is descending. And I just thought that by banning the super tuck, he would essentially be neutralized. That is, the biggest arrow in his quiver, and the UCI just took it away. I'm so happy to see that, he innovated, he adapted, and here he is dropping people on descents once again. So just a huge tip of the hat to Matej Mohoric, his team, for thinking outside the box and equipping him to do what he does best, which is scare the heck out of all of us every single time we get a technical descent.
Now, before you run out, Michael, I don't know, you probably have a dropper post there in your garage. Before everybody runs out and buys dropper post, here's my hot take is that it wouldn't have mattered. He would have won the race anyway. as we say, he's an excellent descender. When you saw him jam off the front, he was going so ballistic that Pogačar wasn't going to stay with him, and Pogačar commented about that anyway. That the gap opened, and Tadej, it's not like he could have gone any faster to try to stick with Mohorič, because it was just crazy, and in fact, so crazy that Mohorič nearly crashed a couple times on the descent. The other thing is, once he got off and bolted off, caught the motorbikes by surprise, and that always happens on that final descent of the Poggio in Sanremo. He was getting the benefit of the draft as well. And then once he's got that little bit of advantage, what happens in any bike race, in any type of terrain, the others behind start looking at each other to do the work. And that's what Pogačar said. He said he started to look over to the sprinters like Van der Poel and Van Aert to start doing the work, because he would get whipped up in the sprint anyway if he did the work himself. So I don't think the dropper post even made a difference.
Hot take, Gregor. It's a game of inches, and who's to say? Maybe it earned Mohorič two seconds at the end of the descent. I don't know. I don't know how many seconds he came off the descent with, but at some point there is a margin that the chasers get discouraged, and it's in. All Mohorič has to do is go as fast as he possibly can down the descent and hope that he is, beyond that point where the chasers are going to start to look at each other. Whether or not the dropper post made a difference, I don't know. That we can debate that until the end of time. But got to say, I'm happy to see him blitzing unhindered by the UCI, doing what he does best. I just love to see it. I love to see a guy use his bike handling skills combined with very good legs to win a bike race. Mohorič, very complete rider. Kudos to him.